Hey, Canucks fans, we are back with another Zoom chat. And after talking to my cousin Dusty a couple weeks ago, I wanted a real goalie on here. So I am proud to introduce my friend. And you know, what's crazy is out of all the media guys, Kevin is probably the guy I've known the longest. And I'll tell you that story in a second. So Kevin, welcome everyone. This is Kevin Woodley. Thanks for being here.
It's good to see you, Clay. Worlds are colliding. This is like a blast from the past and new stuff all at once. So it's awesome that you're part of this Canucks media community, and glad we're getting a chance to catch up. And definitely don't tell Dusty anything about what you just said about goaltending, because there's only one goaltender amongst the two of us in that conversation, and I ain't it.
Oh, that's awesome, Kevin. And really quickly, just so everyone knows, I actually worked with Kevin's lovely wife, Stephanie, about 25 years ago at a big accounting and consulting firm, and still, occasional friends on social media. But now I'd say, Kevin, that's when I met you, right? Right when you guys were starting to date and and that's 25 years ago, man.
Were you part of the Ultimate Crew? Were you part of the Ultimate team over
no,
there?
I was
PWC.
No, I was aware of that team, but no, I never joined. I did come out and watch them a couple of times, though. Yeah, did you play for them?
No, come on. I'd probably end this conversation right now if you told me you're one of the frisbee chuckers. But no, I'm just kidding. It's a tough sport. But I always like to give her a hard time. Hilarious. I went to UVic, where it was like practically part of the Constitution over there that you had to play it. Never played it. Always sort of made jokes at other people's expense, and then I end up marrying Steph, who really likes playing ultimate sports. So or ultimate as a sport.
That is pretty cool. Yes. Put those air quotes out.
I kid.
So I see the nice InGoal hoodie. I know you work with.
Yeah, we got it. We got to rep the brand. We got to. I had to,
So tell everyone.
That's why.
So people on my channel, they know that I do mostly Canucks content. I've been blessed to be connected both with the team, with fans, and some of the media personalities. So we'd love to know about your work with InGoal and your work with NHL.com, if that's cool.
I've been covering the Canucks. I think this is not a good sign. Too many pucks to the head. I think it was my 20th anniversary was this year, like this past season. So it's been like 20 years, or this was my 20th season. Started in 2000. Pretty easy math. I guess that's 20 years. Yeah. But I started covering them for the Associated Press. Induction by fire. The first game I covered was the night McSorley whacked Brashear. So I learned the hard way about deadline writing, and that it's not what's going on in the game isn't always the story. 20 years. Last 10 have been with NHL.com. I used to be a bit of I was purely a freelancer. I wrote, Associated Press was the main one. I wrote for Hockey News, covered a couple Cup finals for USA Today, and just, I was a stringer for SI. Like, whoever would pay me to write about hockey, I was in the room. So I made myself annoying and asked as many questions as possible. And 10 years ago, got hired by the NHL, and then InGoal has kind of come around about that same time. About the 2010 Olympics is when I started with them. I covered the 2010 Olympics for AP, and that was actually my last big thing for Associated Press. And then met a guy that was running InGoal magazine, InGoalMag.com. I'd already done work. I was introduced to goaltending by Vancouver Canucks goalie coach Ian Clark. He hired me to edit his magazine, and that's how I got introduced to goaltending. And then the magazine folded. He had a goaltending company that ran into some trouble. They got into the equipment business, which is a tough industry, and folded, as did the magazine. And InGoal was born. And it's taken us 10 years to make it go from a hobby to a business, but things are starting to roll these last couple. And so for Canucks fans here, I got a special treat, because you actually use the video here, right? It's not just like an audio podcast.
Oh, for sure. This is legit. This is video.
So the first thing I should be doing is finding a hat, right? Like that's.
Well, I didn't want to say.
Yeah. Okay. I never really thought of that. But we'll give the Canucks fans a little. Hopefully, I can do this without seeing it. So that right there.
Yeah.
That is the first ever issue of Goalie News Magazine, Volume 1, Edition 1. Again, hired by Ian Clark to edit it. That was my introduction to goaltending. And who was the first subject? Who was the first guy to appear on the cover of Goalie News Magazine? Well, of course, it was Roberto Luongo. So much like our conversation here, a lot of things just happen to come full circle in this world.
That is pretty cool. And with InGoal now, your role, your title, you run the thing?
No, me and another guy run the thing. A guy named David, gentleman named David Hutchison in Nanaimo. Again, small world. I find his publication, and he's based on the island. At a time when I was actually, Steph's parents live on the island, so my wife. So just all these things come full circle. He founded it. I hopped on board. I handle a lot of the editorial. He handles all the tough stuff. And together we're a pretty good team. We've, really, how do I describe it? It's changed over the decade that we've been doing it, but in the last 2 years, we started a subscription service, and it really is, if you're a goaltender, if you're not a goaltender, probably not for you. If you're a goaltender, young goaltender, goaltender parent, we have over, I think we're up over 150 subscribers are professional goalie coaches. Most of the NHL goalie coaches subscribe to it. Wow. We share tips, drills. NHL goalies do video sessions with us every week where they'll review saves and explain what they're seeing on a certain play and sort of break down the thought process behind how they played it, why they used a certain save selection. And so, the kind of things you just don't get anywhere else. So it's definitely a small niche, but nobody really does it like we do. And because of that, we've started to have some growth and have some success within that niche. So it's been, and I get to talk to goalies. That's the best part, right? My job is to talk to goalies. We have a weekly podcast, InGoal radio podcast, loaded with NHL guests. And it's fun, man. It's fun. So I love it.
Oh, that's great. And Kevin, the subscription, is it all digital?
All digital. We actually, we never did do a fully printed one. We used to run you remember in the era of PDFs where you'd have it on your computer and it was like an actual page turner. You hit the button and it would actually, the page would imaginary turn. We did that for a while, but it's actually quite limiting. At the end of the day, if I'm going to do a video review session with an NHL goaltender, they need the video. Yes. So we're called InGoal Magazine, but it's 100% digital, ingoalmag.com. And, it really allows me to take all these teaching tools and video elements, whether it's from games or, recording practice sessions that the goalies have and then running it by them. Certain drills, what's your key? What are you looking for? What are you focusing on? And then in the summers, non-pandemic years, we get to go to a lot of camps with pro goalies. Check out their summer training and just get insights from them, right? So behind the scenes stuff. So it's been fun.
That's awesome. There's a young man at my home church of St. Paul's in Richmond. I think he's 13, maybe 12 or 13 now. His name's D'Angelo Brule, goaltender. His nickname is Brickwall. So I'm actually gonna, right after we're done here, I'm gonna tell him about your stuff, and I'm gonna get his dad to buy him a subscription for sure.
Oh, we like to hear that. And Brickwall, that's a pretty good nickname. I think. It's a lot better than the nickname my beer league teammates give me. So
are you allowed to say it on here, or do I got to censor
it? No, they usually just swear at me on something about muttering about holes and everything. So there's definitely no brick wall when I'm in net. But like I said, I have fun.
That's awesome. I know people watching this, they're gonna want me to ask you about those 3 jerseys behind you. Quick stories behind any of them?
Just the last 3 Olympic jerseys, all signed and personalized. I mean, the Roberto one actually. Like an idiot, I got the white one with the red. You can't even see the autograph on the number 1. But if I were to flip it around, there's a really nice personalized message there. Cool. Again, he was a guy that I got to know actually in Florida before he was traded here quite well. At times, I think early in his tenure here, I used to say that I'd have better conversations with him when he was in Florida, because I think he was a little guarded in his early years here. And now all of a sudden, instead of just being a guy that he talked goaltending with, we usually did it once a year, an in-depth sort of interview for the old magazine. I became one of those guys that was there daily, and the guard went up. But over the years, we built a really good relationship. And it's kind of tough too. When you're working for the Associated Press, I'm still the objective journalist. Sure. But sports is a toy store, it's a candy store. And yes, there are elements that you need to be serious about. But when I work for the league, it's sort of I'm not in the scoop business. It allows me to build relationships with these guys. And that's kind of what InGoal's all about. I'm not here to criticize them, rip them, things like that. And so, so Roberto's got, and Kerry, I do a camp every summer with him, with kids. We publish a lot of the drills from that. We've been focusing on that recently, going back through all the archives. 5 straight years we were up there with him in Kelowna, and, just built a really good relationship there. And Henrik's a guy that like all three of these are guys who have been really good to us at InGoal, and we built good relationships with. Lundqvist is a guy who, since early in his career, you could send an email to him and he would respond. And
Wow.
even when he was a superstar, you could drop him a note once a summer and ask him something for the magazine, and he'd respond pretty quickly. So all guys that have been very good to us at InGoal over the years. And so all guys that have had success, obviously gold medal winners, and sort of proud to have them behind me and display them. And proud of the relationships we've built with them.
That's pretty cool. I won't make you rank them as who's the best of all time of those three, but my eldest son, Sean, and I were talking about Price versus Luongo accomplishments. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that you're connected to all of them. Kevin, where did your love for goaltending come from?
Okay. So it's funny because I think over the years, like some people have heard this story, so they obviously know, but I think a lot of people just assume that you're a goaltender. You must have been a goaltender growing up, right?
Mm.
Like, I never even played minor hockey. I was baseball. My parents gave me a choice. I played baseball up to a pretty decent level, and that was my sport of choice. Hockey is what I ended up covering, and it wasn't until Ian Clark hired me to edit that magazine I showed that I started to sort of develop a passion for goaltending. So that's 2003, 2002, around there, and Ian Clark is like, he literally wrote the book on modern butterfly goaltending. Like and I mean like volumes. His first publication before Goalie News was called From the Crease, and it was a series of volumes that were instructional, designed to sort of all be packaged into a one of those old binders. They had 3-hole punch them and you put them in the binder and basically create a manual on goaltending. And I mean like a manual, like the Swedes referenced his books and his work, even used some of the same illustrations, borrowed his illustrations for their goaltending manual, which I've seen, the Swedish version. I've seen it, and there's these pictures in there. I'm like, I recognize those. And so he's a guy that, and his goalies will tell you this, he's not a guy that says, do this because I say. He explains why. And his writing is like 2,500 word articles on angle over depth when choosing positioning. And so it could be a lot to sort of make your way through. I guess part of my job was to simplify it as an editor, but through that process, you begin to understand, like when you finish those articles, you understood why we choose angle over depth, why we move into angle first before adding depth, the path we choose to, and why that's the most efficient. And so it opened up a new world to me. I was like every other writer starting. It's like, oh, good goal, bad goal, things like that. But for the first time, I finally started to understand what goalies were trying to do. And so to be able to judge the results based on understanding how they were trying to play it versus just judging the results with no education on what the goaltender was trying to do or what the goaltender was expecting, or in the case of the pro reads videos, it like I thought I knew, and then we did our first pro reads with Carey Price, and we walked through what I thought was a simple sequence, and he identified 6 different things that he was considering when he made his save selection that I hadn't even thought of. And as we've gone through those over the years, increasingly I've noticed how much the defensive structure is part of that decision making and trusting a defenseman to be in it, and how often that dictates how the goalie plays. And so even when journalists now judge good goal, bad goal, why'd the goalie do this? Like what they may not understand is whether the defenseman was where, like, I don't know if they will ever be able to fully appreciate, well, yeah, he did that, but because this is his technique, or because the defenseman was supposed to have that. So it just opened up a whole new world. It opened up a whole new language play. Like, I mean, you heard me talk about goaltending over the years on Vancouver radio stations, a whole bunch of words, VH this, reverse VH that, post integration, reverse tracking, like all these terms, but I learned them all. Yeah. And it opened up, all of a sudden, the conversations I was having with goalies around the league, like nobody was, I'd say nobody, but not many people were speaking to them in their language. As a matter of fact, like, I remember Sergei Bobrovsky early in his career, and I remember the PR guy saying, like, he talks, but he doesn't, he always asks, hey, does he talk on game day, or hey, does this guy talk? And, oh yeah, he talks, but good luck having a conversation with him. Like, he doesn't speak much English. 5 minutes, we had a 15-minute conversation. 5 minutes into it, we're both on the floor on our knees in the locker room, illustrating, breaking the language barrier with goalie talk, and using our hands to demonstrate that we're on the same page with what we're trying to say. So it opened up a new language to me, opened up new conversations, allowed me to build relationships with the goaltenders, and through that, it just developed a passion to want to try it. Yeah. I said 2003. So as you probably know, I had my first daughter in 2004, have two daughters now. Yeah. I may or may not have experienced something called a sympathy pregnancy, which is what I call it. May have gained 50 pounds during our first pregnancy.
Yes, of course.
Steph is really good at ordering a lot of things and then not finishing them. I stepped up to the plate and I finished them, damn it.
So a good husband does. That's a good husband does.
That's right. And we had just moved out to the burbs here in South Surrey, White Rock. So I'd left behind all my weekly basketball and pickup skates as a player. And so the combination of those two things, wanting to learn it and really needing to get in shape, man, I'm telling you, like, it's kind of like the old cliches about putting the fat kid in net, like throw the fat kid in net. But the truth is, like, you can't stay the fat kid for long because it is a ton of work, like the amount of work. And so that was the next level, like writing about it, learning this language, having these conversations that were different than anything I'd ever had in the locker room. And then now I get to play it. And because of the technical background, I'm like, you're like Dusty, your cousin Dusty, like, the way he reads the game and makes reactionary saves, none of that is in my vocabulary. Like, it would on the ice, I don't have any of that instinctual ability, but I very much understood the technique and the foundation to be, and if I could get into position and be set and be square and move in a certain way, there's a good chance it was going to hit me. And so I was able to play sort of above my pay grade for a few years and just, I just love it. So now I'm 48, my hips are 75. Nothing works like it should be. Probably need hip surgery in the next few years, but I still, like, as long as I can, I'll keep playing because I absolutely love goaltending. It's fun. You never have to leave the ice. Yeah. You get to dictate, like, it's a blast, right? And for when they try and kick me off the ice, I also made sure that I was the manager of my beer league team and I have all the beer, so they can't get rid of me.
Perfect. That's brilliant. It's funny, Kevin, because I knew we were about the same age. You're 48, I'm 47. I thought I looked young for 47, but I think, honestly, man, you're good looking 48. Honestly, it looks good on you.
That's because the blonde hair hides all the gray that's up there.
I love what you said about Dusty, though, because for many more casual fans who just find out, they see the last name Emo. Oh, that's a very unique name. Are you guys related? Yeah, he's my first cousin. Our dads are brothers. So I always tell the story how Dusty started ahead of McLennan in Lethbridge, how he started ahead of Olaf Kozig in New West, right? And then he had a different path, as you know, and then did very well for Japan Olympics, and then got into the pros. But I always say he was so slight, right? He's only 5'10", 175. He was the fastest goalie reaction I've ever seen. But and that was like 30 years ago. I didn't know how drafting and the difference between major, junior, and college. Like, I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. I was just the cousin 4 years as junior, cheering him on and being excited when I saw his name right on the back of a jersey.
Yeah, no, and I think he hasn't forgotten a lot of those sort of old, like, for lack of a better term, old school roots, and he brings a lot of that to his coaching and his teaching in a positive manner, like, not in a way that the game's obviously modern and has all those elements, but he brings a lot of that feel and instinct to his guys, like how to catch a puck. Like, there are a lot of modern goaltenders that can't really catch a puck. We were talking with the Anaheim Ducks goalie coach recently, Sudarshan Maharaj, Sudsy, and he's had times with his European goaltenders where he bought them baseball gloves and they were playing like 500 up, and just to try and like build some of those innate sort of motor skills, because goaltending can become, like me now, like, it's very technical. There's not a lot of feel, that rhythm, that baiting shooters, all those elements of the game have kind of been lost. And guys my age are the ones that are supposed to be able to do that. I play on Monday nights at a skate that is way above my head with a bunch of guys who played at a much higher level. Love it, but get lit up on a regular basis. The guy at the other end of the rink, he's from New Westminster, Bill Morrison, played some pro overseas. He's got all those elements in his game, just like Dusty would. I love watching it. And as a guy of that vintage, I'm supposed to have that, but I just don't because I was brought up. I learned the game in this new way. And so I'm like a lot of these young goaltenders, you know, well, except I suck, but I'm like a lot of these young goaltenders in that that's the only way I know, right? I don't play with a lot of flow. I'm not baiting shooters. This guy's always telling me to bait. Oh yeah, show him the glove side and then take it away. I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to stay in the middle of the freaking net as long as I can here.
Whatever I'm showing, it's not on purpose, right? Like
exactly. Like if I show them that, I'm not going to remember to take it away, or they're going to put it in before I take. Like just you guys in your old school ways. But there's value in that. There's value in today's game in unpredictability.
Yeah.
What did we see in game one? Like how many saves did Vasilevsky and Price make without dropping both knees to the ice?
Yeah.
You know, sort of one knee down, patient on holding their edges, having that patience. And there's a modern teaching and element to holding your edges and having patience and biomechanics and proper tracking and how to go to the ice without opening up. But at the end of the day, that element of unpredictability of showing one thing and delivering another, Robin Lehner talks about it a lot. Like that's becoming increasingly valuable in the National Hockey League. If you do the same thing that every other goalie does, then every young shooter that's coming into the game that's learned where the holes are in that sort of static robotic movement is going to light you up. And so I can make jokes about it, but the reality is it's a bit of a lost art. And some of the guys that are having the most success have elements of it in their game.
That's cool. Of the many things I admire about you, Kevin, truly is whether I hear you on Sportsnet 650 or your own podcast or other people's podcasts, you obviously know your stuff, yet you use terminology, but you don't like lord it over people. You try and break it down for people. So I got two really important questions for you, and they might be the same answer, but I'll let you run with them. Number one, tell us one thing that the casual or even the seasoned hockey fan just has no clue about the game when it comes to goaltending, like what a goaltender is thinking. Like, so tell us one thing that a casual fan would be fascinated to know about how goaltenders work and how they see the game. And secondly, now that you've done this for 20 years, what's the biggest fundamental change you've seen in the way a goalie plays from 20 years ago? So two questions. Tell me something that would fascinate a casual fan, and what's the biggest change in goaltending style, at least the successful ones that you've seen over your 20 years?
I think two things that the casual fan, because I wasn't a casual fan. I've been covering the game for 18 years until we started doing those pro reads. But like I said before, just how much of what a goaltender does is based on trusting his defense to do what they're supposed to do, and how much of that decision-making process is tied into it. So that would be one. The other one, and this is, I'm cherry picking here a little bit, and I don't mean to pick on analysts, but my pet peeve, it's funny because Sean Burke believes the same thing. We heard a lot about this when he went to Montreal this year, and I know this is part of his philosophy. Is whenever you hear an analyst say the goalie had no chance on that, I cringe a little bit because there's a good chance that the goalie just didn't give himself a chance on that. And it's become a little less so and a little less so as goalies play a little more conservative game. But this used to, especially back in the day, like the mid 2000s, where there was still a lot of aggression and flow in the game. Goalies played well outside the crease and retreated with the rush. And you would see a goaltender, and others were just starting, like Lundqvist, goal line out, more passive positioning, inside out rather than out and back in, outside in goaltending. And so you'd always see like there'd be a cross ice pass, and the guy would shoot it into an empty net, and it'd be like the goaltender didn't have a chance on it. He had no chance on that. And I'm like, no, he did have a chance on it. If he wasn't 6 feet out at the other end of the ice, at the bottom of the hash marks that the play came over the blue line, he gave himself no chance. And I do think that one of the things I've learned over the years is that video never lies. And quite often goals are not scored in the moment where the puck is shot and goes into the net. Quite often, and again, especially on passing sequences, quite often where the goal is scored is if you rewind it 2 or 3, sometimes 4 touches, and the goalie will make a decision, whether it's a read like defensively and how it, or it's a positioning, the way he plays it, where he puts himself in a position or gets behind on a sequence that results in a goal. And so at the end of it, it may look like he had no chance and the guy's tapping it into an open net. But in today's day and age, outside of like some of these seam passes and the velocity they come through to that back door, okay, he didn't have much of a chance. But a lot of the time, he just didn't give himself a chance. And that used to be it's less and less, but that used to be one of my biggest pet peeves. You'd hear it on broadcast all the time. And I know goalies around the world sort of cringed at the same thing. So those are two of the most common ones. Last one, and this is a soapbox I've been on for years, is team practice typically sucks for goaltenders. As a matter of fact, it can actually be detrimental to goaltenders because a lot of team practices is everybody taking shots, like just repeated rush drills. And it's gotten better over the years, but like guys teeing pucks up and taking shots they might get once, maybe not once in an entire season, and they're just going over and over and over and bar down and no breaks for like a lot of team practice structure sucks for goalies. And I think that's something that even in the NHL, it's taken coaches forever to figure out. And at the end of the day, if your drills suck for your goalies because they're not game realistic, are you really doing your players any service by allowing them to pump in shots that they're never going to get in a game? Like, where's the reality to that? I think the coaches, funny enough, I did a Hockey Canada conference recently where Andre Tournier, who I believe is going to be named the new Arizona Coyotes head coach tomorrow, according to Craig Morgan, or maybe by the time everybody hears this, it was four goalie coaches and Andre coached with Patrick Waugh, obviously in Colorado. And he talked about that. Like, your goalie has to sometimes take part in those drills that suck for him, but they're for the team because it's not always about him. But if your practice is full of those and you're not considering your goaltender in practice, you're in trouble because he's your most important player. And so he talked about how they structure their practices there to make sure it was both realistic in terms of system and structure and the types of chances, but for the goalies, and how they would tailor their PK, whether it was Varlamov or Giguère, both had different preferences. So what they took away on the PK on a specific night, they didn't change their whole structure, but what the focus of what they were going to eliminate from the other team was different if it was the explosive Varlamov in that versus the more, give them a straight look Giguère, and they would alter it that way. So how much sort of team structure and that type of stuff affects the goaltender? That's the other one that I don't think ever. I always say goaltending doesn't exist in a vacuum. So you asked for one. I was struggling to come up with one. I came up with three. Those are my pet peeves that people don't understand.
Fascinating stuff, Kevin. So let's move from pet peeves to give us one or two, or at least one. What's one way that the modern goaltender is way different than 20 years ago?
The ability to move on the knees. As much as the game has changed in the last 5 years and become more east-west, patience on the skate, the ability to move east-west without committing to your knees and being able to hold edges and not go to your knees is increasingly important. The ability to move from your knees, recover from your knees, in and off your post, has just gone through the roof. Like, it's not about the butterfly as a save selection. It's not a style, it's a save selection. It's about the ability to move from the butterfly, in and out of the post with one pad down. Like, guys move as well on their knees now as a lot of goalies could skate 20 years ago. They move as quickly with as much precision as much power, and it's the training, it's the technique, it's the skill of the goalies, it's the equipment. Like, we now have pads that are designed, like, they've changed the materials on the inner edge of the pads so that they slide better. Like, all that tech has caught up, all the training has caught up, and goalies move as well on their knees as, 20 years ago, there were still goalies in the NHL that didn't recover. So if you drop to a butterfly, we call it proper leg recovery. And this is one of my inductions to goaltending. So you drop to the butterfly. These are my knees. If I want to move, and this is my skates on either side of my elbow. If I want to move to my left and I'm on my knees and I want to move that way, I need to get up on, so this is my right knee. I need to get up with my right leg, which allows me to engage this right skate and now push across, whether I'm pushing across into a slide or whether I'm pushing back up to my feet. Forever, guys just had a dominant leg they got up on all the time. Olaf Kolzig, right to the end of his career, I think he was a right dominant leg recovery. So he would, if he needed to move to his right, he should be getting up with his left skate, but he always got up with his right. So now instead of, if I'm moving that way and I get up with this skate, I've got an edge and I can push right now and start moving.
Yeah.
If I get up with this skate and I need to push to my right, this is all backwards to people, I realize.
Yeah, but
now I got to get this other skate. I got to get this other skate back up so I can have that edge to push. And you think of the delays involved with that. But there was a whole generation. I learned goaltending at a time when a bunch of the NHL, including guys like Curtis Joseph, didn't learn until his last couple of years. They didn't do this. And then you go to a camp and there are 12 and 13-year-olds that did this. And that was a new thing at the time. Oh. Now, like, if you don't do it, like, I mean, you know, every minor hockey coach at the age of 8 would be able to, you know, from 8-year-olds old up, be able to spot that.
Yeah.
But all these things that become new in the NHL are already being taught, or they get taught immediately to the 8, 9, 10-year-olds. And then that generation comes up doing that innately. And that ability to move from the knees, like, over the past 20 years has just been like rocket ship to the moon. It is just like, it's incredible how they move. Incredible. Watch Vasilevsky.
Yeah.
His power, his end range, he can be fully extended and still have access to power. He'll be fully extended. Watch for this one. It'll happen in this series. He'll be fully extended, fully butterfly, like not quite split, but really reached out. Not only is he able to, and again, equipment changes. In the old days, Marc-Andre Fleury had all his power because he would lift his knee way up high to get that edge inside. And so if you get your edge underneath you, you've got more power with your legs, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays you could lift your knee this much because the skates, they've removed, there's no more cowlings on goalie skates, right? So that the edge of the skate so you're on the ice, your skates like this, your blades like this. It used to be you'd have to lift your skate and your knee, like your knee would have to come way up before you could get an edge.
Right.
Now these goalies, they got super tall steel. They got super tall holders. They got no cowlings on the inside edge to cause them to slip out. They just lift their skate like this, and there's enough edge there. As soon as it's past the point of shaving ice, you can get an edge and push. So Vasilevsky can push with power without barely lifting his knee. But if you watch him on this side, if I were to push without rotating, I'm going to come across flat. He'll be fully extended. As he's starting to get this edge to push from an impossible angle, he'll already have this edge established, and he will be making a reverse ski cut to gain his rotation, so that when he does push, he's pushing into the space on the post, whereas most guys do it and they push straight across the crease, but they don't rotate back to their post and they get in trouble. Like,
right.
I mean, he's the ultimate example, but there's a little technical thing that you can look for. Watch out. He'll cut the ice with that inside edge to get rotation as he's pushing and get into angle and over top of the puck, rather than a lot of guys just end up desperate, straight across and then reaching back behind them. He's able to get rotation, stay closer to the puck, be on angle, and then build that coverage with his glove over top of his pad, because he's kept everything. He's gained that rotation. He's not just splaying out.
Wow.
I mean, I'm geeking out a little bit.
No, I love it.
Yeah, he's so fun to watch. He's so good.
I love it. One more question before we get to Canucks specific. Are you okay with Fleury winning the Vezina this season over Vasilevsky?
Yeah, because they finally got it right. I got to admit, I was going to apologize to the GMs for ripping them, because I figured they were going to screw this up and give it to Vasilevsky. Marc-Andre Fleury, like, I have access to ClearSight Analytics, the numbers, but from the company Stephen Valaket runs. And they've got a lot more than just goalie numbers, but their goalie numbers in my mind are superior. They have 34 different types of shot variations and measure quality with more factors than anyone else. And so Fleury was number one with a bullet. Like, Vasilevsky this season had a great year, but nobody carried their team as much as Marc-Andre Fleury. I could go through the numbers, but they all just point to Marc-Andre Fleury should win the Vezina.
Good.
Vasilevsky had more wins. That's usually how the GMs vote. I thought they'd screw it up. They got the right guy. But when you look at the voting, I don't know. I can't speak to their hearts and minds. My hunch is a little bit with sentiments and career sort of achievement awards. They will vote. They have voted that way in the past. But if you look at it, 4 of them never voted for Vasilevsky at all.
Yeah,
4 guys never even had him on their ballot. Like, how's that guy not in your top 3? And if you do the math, all it takes is 2 of those guys to have him second and 2 to have him third, and he wins the Vezina.
Right.
So getting it right because 4 of them are clueless.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd be letting them off the hook to give them that much credit. I don't know how anybody doesn't have Andre Vasilevsky on their ballot. He was fully deserving this year of second place. But in the end, justice is served. Flower gets his Vezina. We're all happy.
It's probably that Florida GM. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know who it was. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the Canucks for a few minutes before we go into our rapid fire at the end. Thatcher Demko, 5 years, $5 million a year.
Rapid fire? You didn't tell me rapid. I'm a goalie. Rapid fire. Like now I'm going to be like in the corner in the fetal position, just thinking about rapid fire. Thanks.
And I've called it the 5-0 too, because it's 5 questions. So that's another thing that's going to give you a complex. By the way, speaking of complex, I tell the story how I think when Dusty and I used to play when we were growing up, he would put me in net because I'm sure he's taking all his frustrations. He would take Kevin slap shots at me from 8 feet away, and I have no pads on. I think it was just all his bottled up frustration all in one shot and just hitting me in the gonads and just laughing at me. Good cousin.
Yeah, that's I mean, he just wanted to toughen you up. Listen, there's been a lot of conversations at the InGoal, like we're like 126 episodes in an InGoal radio podcast.
Yeah.
Like usually goalies become goalies for one of 2 reasons. One, they were the little brother or sister, and that was the only way they got to play. That was one of them. Like you can divide them into these categories. 2, they fell in love with the gear. Like that was the one. But then the other one is like the one that falls in love with it because dad played. And then the inevitable question becomes, did dad want you to play? And most didn't. Like if dad was a goalie, like Braden Holtby's dad didn't mind that he was a goalie, but he wouldn't let him just be a goalie until he was like 13 or 14. Made him play out and keep playing. Other guys, some of the extreme cases we've heard, we just had Jack LaFontaine on Carolina pick, just won the Mike Richter Award as the top goalie in college hockey. His dad made him play his first year wearing like street hockey goalie equipment on ice. He was covered in bruises, he said. Hands, like wearing street hockey gloves, like getting killed out there. But he still had a smile on his face. So the next year he got real equipment and that was okay. So he was just testing you. We had another one that dad actually said he took him to the basement, put him in the gear, and ripped clappers at his head as hard as he could. And when he didn't flinch, he figured it was okay. He could be a goalie. So don't worry. You just got tough love from Dusty to test you out.
Okay. You're a good friend. Okay. So I know the news is about a month old now, but Demko, 5 years, $5 million a year. Is this a good contract for where he's at right now? And do you think this will age well?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty bullish on Thatcher Demko. Now they've got the goalie coach here with him. We've seen the results they've had. I think there's a good relationship there and they'll continue to keep building. And, I mean, the only thing I wonder is whether they need to go that big, that long. That in terms of the dollars, I had his dollar figure based on some of the comparables, Mackenzie Blackwood, where he was, things like that. I think you could have signed him for less, but obviously you probably weren't going to get 5 years. And so it's a nice trade-off, I guess. Like if you're counting on him continuing to get better, I mean, he should have been a Vezina Trophy finalist based on the numbers. I mean, he never will be because the team sucks, but talk about the clear sight numbers. Like he was third on the goal saved above expected this year. And so, that's a good investment for 5. Like I said, I think you could have got him cheaper in the short term, but if he continues to progress, the money you save in a couple, over 2 years, or the money you may have spent extra over the next 2, you're more than going to make back in the final 3. So I'm fine with it.
Right. And I remember when they drafted him, Kevin, I don't have a lot of friends within the Canucks, but I heard a couple of them, at least a friend of a friend, say that the franchise had Luongo type hopes for him. Like they believed him that much from the time they drafted him. I'm not sure if you heard similar things, but they've obviously made that investment in him now, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah. I remember after they drafted him, like I loved Thatcher right away when I first got to meet him because he's like a no stone unturned guy. Like he used to have a journal that he kept, like where he'd watch NHL games and make notes on the other goalies and how they did things, and he'd go try it. Like he loves the position. He's got that passion for it. And to me, those are the guys that tend to have long careers because they're never resting on their laurels. They're always looking to get better. And he just checked all those boxes. But it was ironic when they drafted him, they talked about him being, just technically sound. I think that phrase gets thrown out a lot. And then I'll never forget because me and Kluch had the same sort of reaction to the first time we saw him at one of those development camps. Like technically, he was pretty raw, actually. There's a lot of stuff that I thought for a goalie of his caliber and his resume and that draft stature probably should have been part of his game. And again, now when I look in retrospect, like he's added all those elements, like he's completely, like his game is as good as anyone's in terms of technique. The pace with which he plays is incredible. Like there's a lot of great elements, and maybe some of that instinctual stuff that he had to play on because the other technical elements weren't where they were supposed to be. So the only mistake they made was throwing out that phrase like every team does, but I can't believe how technically sound this guy is. Because then the goalie coach looks at him at development camp, he's like, what were we talking about? Anyways, but that's good, right? Like the kids that have so much technique at so young an age, they can often survive on it, especially at Thatcher's size. And so when you play a little more on instinct at a younger age, you're forced to develop those instincts. You learn to make the reads because you're not just going to a position and closing the holes, which big goalies at young ages can get away with. So it ends up being a positive, and you just look at the way his game's progressed since he turned pro. Throughout his time in the Vancouver organization, and then the jump he made in the last year with Ian, there's a lot of reasons to be really optimistic about his future. They weren't quite the same then, but he still checked a lot of the other boxes. And now that those pieces have all come together, it's going to be an exciting few years here.
Cool. I heard you on the radio earlier this week with Halford Bruff talking about how Braden Holtby had a just a tricky start by the time he got here, and no preseason and blah, blah, blah. But you also said that he's also a quick learner. I remember you saying that, and just the way he can adjust. And do you expect him to be better this season?
I do. There were times this year that I wondered if it was square peg, round hole. Braden's the guy who plays a lot of flow, a lot of feel. And I wondered about whether Ian's more structured elements he was trying to add. I got to the point where others were asking that question of me around the league, and I was starting to wonder, but I was told that he had bought in, like he really was. And when you get to talk to him and you hear some of his answers late in the season about why it's been a struggle to sort of integrate the changes, but I watched him in practice every day, like he was always working to make those changes. And so I don't think it's square peg, round hole. I think it's possible to add that foundation and not abandon the feel elements we talked about that made him so good before. You can find a balance there. And, I think Ian's not he's a dictator in terms of he makes them work hard, like really hard. And not every goalie that has him leaves loving him. But, he's going to get the most out of them, but he doesn't shove them in a box. Like there are some non-negotiables in terms of ways to play, but he'll also allow them to have some feel. And we see, how many 2-pad stacks DeBarkey used to throw. And I think there's a cap per year, but he's still allowed to throw them out there, right? So when he was here. So I do think there's better days ahead for him. I'll be curious if it's here or somewhere else. But I do think that some of the work that was put in this year will start to pay off a little more. I've seen this with him. He came to Kelowna a number of years ago. The year they won the Cup, actually, the summer before, to work with a consultant that the Caps had been working with a little bit, that I do some work with, Lyle Mass, and I did all the video. We were on the ice for 3 straight days in Kelowna, and Braden changed in 3 days. Like his ability to sort of control his body and adapt things was off the chart. He changed his blocker execution, his saves, his stance setup, his movement patterns. He changed them in 3 days. I'd never seen anything like it. But then when the season started and the preseason started, he wasn't comfortable in all of them, and he went back to how he used to do it. And so I do think he's a guy that needs the opportunity to play into getting comfortable with changes. And he never really got that chance this year. And not all the changes he won't adopt them all. And there were times in games where you could see him in the first period play sort of using the new stuff, and you could see him drift back to old Braden as the game went on. And so I think there's always going to be a little bit of that old Braden in there. It's just, can you find a balance? And I think with more opportunities to sort of experiment in a preseason without the pressure the pressure was there from game one, right? They got off to a bad start. there was no margin for error. There was no chance to just sort of let it come to you. And I think he'll get that this year, and he'll have another year under his belt. I'm curious to see what he does in the offseason training wise. We heard this from Markstrom after his first year with Ian, I remember how excited he was because as far as he came, there were still things he couldn't do physically that Ian wanted, that with a summer of training differently, he would be able to do physically his second year. We all know how that second year went. So, see if Braden makes some of those adjustments as well. And if there are a few things that maybe they were working on that he just frankly couldn't do, that he will be able to coming into next season. I actually overheard him in one of the practices one day talking with Mikey DiPietro, asking him how, about they were doing this drill, these movement patterns. And like he just said, like, I just can't do that yet. Like I just physically can't do that yet. And that takes time, right?
Oh, that's cool. And perfect segue. Last question about the Canucks. Let's say Holtby either gets scooped by Seattle or they trade him. Is DiPietro ready for this season? And if not, what is Mikey DiPietro's ceiling in the NHL?
Oh, I mean, I don't want to put a ceiling on him. There are a lot of people, even people that aren't sort of sizist, they think you can play at 6 foot, and I'm on that page. I think Ian Clark actually believes that, anything on either side of 6'3" ish, you have to overcome. So whether you're 6 foot, you got to overcome a lack of size, or you're 6'6", you got to overcome having too much size. Like there's, that sweet spot that Thatcher's in, 6'3", 6'4". And I know Mikey's won Ian over in terms of that he's going to play and he's going to be an NHL goalie. There's still some people that at 6 foot wonder if the ceiling isn't as high. So I would never do that. I think it's dangerous to put a ceiling on Mikey DiPietro just because of how hard he works, how passionate he is, and how good he is. Yeah. But watching him change his game from when he was drafted to now, like he's not the same goalie, like not even close. He's so much better, and
what's the
his
biggest
ability
change, Kev? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Set up, access to pucks. The funny thing is after he was drafted and the lot was made to the size, I remember having a conversation with him for InGoal, and he kind of so candid. He said, like, it's funny because all these people talk about my size, but the truth is, I don't get beat over the shoulders. I get beat. My issue is low over the pads. And interestingly enough, I worked at a Hockey Canada camp that summer with an OHL goalie coach. It was the program of excellence, and Mikey was there. And this is where he started to learn some of these new mechanics of movement and save execution. And the OHL coach said, yeah, like we would just target him over the pads. Like he's 6 foot, but like back then you beat him low over the pads because the way he hunched over the ice in his stance and his setup, he was so bent over at the waist that then to drop his knees to the ice, everything had to come back up, right?
Right.
The way he loaded, as soon as he dropped his knees, everything that pushed to the ice put the knees down, but pulled everything else back. And so if I'm up here, if I'm up here, first of all, my shoulders are coming back away from the puck, my head's coming back, puck's down here, I'm up here visually, and my arms, I challenge people to do this at home. It's a little hard to demonstrate here, but drop to your knees and, go into a butterfly and then pretend there's a puck 6 inches in front of you. What do you have to move to reach that puck, Clay?
Your arms.
Oh, no. Because watch, if I move my arms won't get there.
Oh, you got
You have to go
to get up. Yes,
exactly. And so when you're back like this, he physically, not only could he not see his hands down at the bottom of his pads and see those low shots and have access to them visually, but he couldn't reach them. Like he was extended and back. And now if you're over top, and so now you see his stance, and he's got his chest now up this year. That was a big changer last year with Ian, but everything's sort of rounded and over. And now when he goes to the ice, everything is into it. And so he goes to the ice with his hands. He has access to pucks over his hands. He has the patience on that to go forward to catch one up on the shoulder or stay up here. He's not pulling back and away from the puck. And so that to me is the biggest change. It started at that camp in Hockey Canada. He's not a guy you beat along the ice. It was on display at the World Juniors. Tough break, but he was really good in that tournament. And then within all the other elements, post play, crease movement patterns, work off the rush in terms of narrowing his stance. He used to get into that low stance way too early, which made it hard to see around screens at 6 foot. Now he's upright when the play's at the perimeter. All these little elements, but to me, the foundation that changed for him was sort of a stance, a setup, and a save execution that allowed him to stay on the puck longer through the release, see the puck longer, see the puck cleaner, and have access to more pucks, especially down over his pads.
Kevin, that was an awesome visual. It looked like you were like on a fast ride at Disneyland or something for a minute. That looks really good.
Yeah, I'm not trying to like really, all I'm trying to do, Clay, is like just get to do this. Like I've never had long hair, so I'm playing with it. I'm having fun.
That's good. All right, let's wrap up with our rapid fire. Sorry to scare you. And it is called the 5-hole. 5 quick questions. You can answer them as succinctly or as long as you want to. First one.
Well,
yeah.
My beer league teammates, when they see this, are going to be like, oh, 5-hole. He's got this.
And he actually hinted at this one, but I'd love to hear it one more time. What's the sport that you excel most at playing?
I mean, I'm not much of an athlete. Baseball was my thing growing up. So, but I probably couldn't even hit a baseball now. So it's definitely not my golf swing. Eddie Lack has a video somewhere of that, and I made him promise he'd delete it, but he hasn't. It's kind of like Jim Furyk, but with like some type of nervous tick. So this is not really painting a good picture of me as an athlete. It sure as hell wasn't ultimate play.
But back in the day, it was baseball.
Back in the day, it was baseball. It's probably hockey now. Like, not that I'm a 48-year-old beer leaguer, but it's hockey is the one I actually play the most. And
what position did you play in baseball? Yeah.
Shortstop and then second base.
Nice.
Didn't quite have the arm to stick it short. So yeah.
Very cool. Number 2, you're starting a team from scratch. You want Elias Pettersson or Quinn Hughes?
Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah. No wrong answer, obviously, but the split has been. Well, actually, I'll wait till you answer.
I would I think just Pettersson's that elite talent, and yet so that would probably be my pick. Mm-hmm. But so is Quinn. See, to me though, the other answer here is like as a goalie guy. And they'll probably take away, like they're probably coming right now to take away my goalie card as I say this, but it's in my wallet. It's laminated. They're kind of cute. If you were to ask me, could I have 3 elite centers, an elite top 4 on D, or a superstar goaltender? As a goalie, like I know goalie coaches in the NHL that will answer this. If you ask them honestly, they will tell you, I don't want the elite goaltender or the top 3 up the middle centers. Give me an elite top 4 D, and I will build you a goaltender that can win behind that. And so I would head towards Hughes because we know what he's capable of. But the reality of his defensive play, especially this year, there are some things there that need to improve and need to change in his own end. And that's where my hesitation to just say defense would lie. And I'd probably stick with Pettersson. But can't go wrong with either one, and that's a good problem to have if you're the Vancouver Canucks after some lean years.
Agreed, and it harkens back to one of the very first answers you give about one thing that we don't know as casual fans is you kind of talked about the communication, the anticipation, the reads between a goalie and a defenseman. Quite fascinating. Very, very, very cool.
Well, and you also just need defensemen that are actually good too. Like that helps. Not that they were bad, but like whether it was system or personnel. Like the Canucks were this. I've said this before, this Montreal quote unquote Cinderella run, and I get it, it is like 5-on-5 high danger chances against is a metric at Clearsight that tends to lead and trigger directly with playoff success. Montreal was second in the league. That part of this is not a fluke. In the regular season, they had the second best record. The Vancouver Canucks were 31st by a wide margin. So that's why my hesitation on Hughes, not because I don't think he's a great defenseman, but where I think the Canucks need to improve defensively is in how well they actually defend.
Very good. Number 3, you won't offend me either way because I'm half of both. Do you prefer Japanese food or Chinese food?
Oh, well, I mean, my wife's, her parents are her dad was from Shanghai. Her mom is from Hong Kong. She's born in Winnipeg, Canadian, she's a better skater than me, which again, not saying much. But this is a tough one. Are we talking like
not you're going out to eat somewhere like
like with her family, like real Chinese food, or are we talking like the guai lo, chicken chow mein? Like, the stuff that I grew up on, right? And I didn't realize that like pigeon was was something, and gooey duck, and her cousins used to introduce me to some stuff, like it was like a test, right? Like the first time I went out for lunch with the family and they ordered the pigeon and the top comes off. I didn't mind. It's like duck, or it's like chicken basically. But when the lid comes off on the dish and the little pigeon head and he's looking at you, they were messing with me big time. So I have an appreciation for both. Canby, the hot pot on Canby at King Ed might be that might be one of my favorite places to eat. And yet, if I could eat sushi, I would eat it 5 times a week. So I'm either gonna piss you off or piss off her family.
No, you won't. You won't make me mad.
Only, you know what though? She's not gonna listen. Like, she likes us both, Clay, but she's not gonna listen. So I'm gonna say Japanese food. We're gonna satisfy your side today.
Best answer. Oh, and I've done a few dozen of these chats, and no one is using the term guaylo yet. So that was pretty impressive.
I am definitely the guaylo in my way. Yeah, no question. But I'm learning. I'm eager to try anything, and I've actually had some trips over there with her family overseas and over to Hong Kong, and got to see and try and learn about that culture rather than just experience it secondhand. So it's been pretty cool.
Beautiful. Speaking of food, number 4, if this guy was paying for food and you got to spend a couple hours with him, would you rather go out for dinner with Travis Green, Jim Benning, or Francesco Accolini? Who are you going out to dinner with, Kevin?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's probably Travis. Because I mean, a lot of this stuff, there is a daily interaction there, and I'm not one of the guys that asks a lot of questions. Just, I don't need to for my job. Try to stay out of the way of the beat guys, but there are like I get a lot of stuff obviously through my relationship with the goalie coach about what they're trying to do. I'd be fascinated to have that discussion with him in terms of, you know, we talked about the system and how things fit and how much is, like I said, when we did this Hockey Canada thing recently, there were 3 goalie coaches and Andre Tournier, a head coach, and when as the moderator for this panel discussion at this conference, I was originally kind of like, oh, I don't know, should we really have a head coach in here? This is a goalie coach conference, like head coaches, like. And the answers he gave to me were among the most fascinating and enjoyable part of so I'd love to have that. Travis would hate it because I would be geeking out on goalie stuff with him, but I'd love to have those same conversations with him just to get a better understanding of how those things work for the Vancouver Canucks. As much as I try and learn, I don't know that I have the full grasp of where things work within their system. And I'd love to have an honest discussion over dinner about his philosophies there. Plus, he's got the poker background, and we have a mutual friend. And one of the guys I play with on Monday nights is Greg Mueller, who has 3 World Series of poker bracelets. And so, you know, I wouldn't know whether I could, if he gave me answers, I wouldn't know, like, he'd have that poker face. And so I'd be trying to figure out, is he telling me the truth here? Is he screwing with me? So yeah, I'm going to say Travis Green. Great answer. Greg Mueller, AKA the head zombie in the opening video a few years ago. That's right. He may take a little heat about that choppy stride, because as soon as on Monday night, because that's when we knew he had a role in it, and we knew that it was him when we saw that choppy stride coming down on the forecheck. So well, just kidding, Neil. Yeah, zombies can't skate anyways. Number 5, what's one thing, Kevin, that most people don't know about you that you wouldn't mind sharing to the probably hundreds of people that are going to watch this thing? So what's one thing that people don't know about Kevin Woodley? Well, I mean, most people don't really know me. Like, I'm not, I'm very small on the Vancouver media totem pole. Most people don't know much about me. What don't people know about me? Oh, man. I was born in Whitehorse, Yukon. Oh, nice. There you go. Yes. There you go. So haven't been back since I was 6 days old, but I was born in Whitehorse, Yukon. So there you go. There's an odd fact. I love it. And I think, and I love to surf. There's my two weird non-goalie things. So the white guy from Whitehorse, the Guaylo from Whitehorse, loves to surf. There, that'll be the subtitle of this episode. Kevin, where can people follow you, and both for InGoal and yourself on social media? Yeah, Kevin is InGoal is my Twitter, and I think we're InGoal. We're just InGoal Mag at Instagram, and on Twitter it is, I think it's actually InGoal Media. I'm just double checking that right now. Quite a little ragging the clock here, but yeah, InGoal Media. on Twitter. So INGOAL media on Twitter, and InGoal Mag at social, and InGoalMag.com if you want to check it out. Like I said, it is a subscription site, but all our podcasts are unlocked, obviously. All our equipment reviews are unlocked, and you can preview every article. I think we have 35 like on ice teaching drill instruction things with Carey Price. So if you want to learn from the best, and that's the beauty part about kind of tough night tonight for the Habs. But
yeah,
I've loved about these playoffs, like the same tips that we have video of Carey going over and giving to like 8, 9, 10-year-olds, and a beer leaguer. One showed up for the camp. You see him playing on the biggest stage, whether it's the Olympics or right now in the Stanley Cup final. And the same fundamentals that he teaches at InGoalMag.com for our premium members, shameless plug, that he teaches to these kids at these camps are on display every night when he plays. And so, again, that's the other thing I love about this position. One, there's no one way to do this. There is no right way. Every goalie is different. There's sliding scales in every aspect of the position, and every goalie on each aspect locks in at a different spot on that scale. And it's like this great chart. No goalie looks the same. And yet the same fundamentals that Carey's in the Stanley Cup final with, I can teach to a beer leaguer. Well, except me, because I can't execute. Or to an 8 or 9-year-old kid. And so it's just, how do you not love that? Like, it's great. This is why it's the best position in the world. I suck at it and I still love it. And I love, as you can tell, because you're probably looking at your clock going, when's he going to shut up?
No, we're good. We're good.
I love talking about it too. So thanks for letting me do that, Clay.
No, Kevin, you have been awesome. Thank you I feel so much smarter now when it comes to goaltending, and I'm also going to be more forgiving to my cousin Dusty, but you've been great. And no, I can't wait to continue to read, listen, and watch your stuff. I'm going to go give Brickwall's dad a call right as soon as we're done too.
Well, and obviously you survived Dusty's shots in the basement or wherever it happened. So just so you know, if you ever decide part 2 and you'd like to be like me and just give this a whirl later in your career, we call my garage the InGoal garage. Lots of demo equipment in there if you want to try it out. So if you need to have part 2 on the ice, you let me know, Clay. We'll set you up.
I'm going to take you up on that. Say hi to Steph, and I can meet your family too. So Kevin, thanks again. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's good. Thanks for having me on, Clay. I really appreciate the invite.
All right, anytime. Take care.